I'm Tom Johnson, Thomas Johnson Antique Furniture Restoration in Gorham, Maine. This is a nice old drop leaf table. It's a gate leg table, and I think the top appears to be made of birch. It seems to be very old. I might get a better idea when I'm working on it, but it certainly appears to be old. The base is made of various woods. The drawer certainly gives the impression of being very old. Big, single, kind of crude dovetail. This table's been refinished before, and the main complaint that the customer has now is just this surface here. It's been very, very badly stained. So what I'm going to do is refinish the top. I'm going to try not to sand this top very much. I'm going to sand it some, and then hopefully some oxalic acid will take these stains out. And then I'll refinish the whole top and make it look a lot better. I can see that there's new screws holding this top onto the base. I also see cutouts here for hinges. Right away it makes you think, well, the top's not original to this base. The top seems sturdy on this base. I think I'm going to not take this top off. I'm just going to take the leaves off. Doesn't seem like an old screw. The top of it looks old, but the threads, it certainly is a modern screw. I want to make sure that these screws go back into the same holes when I go to put it back together. I noticed when I was carrying these leaves over, it's got a loose joint here. This could be tough to clamp up. I'm going to see if I can clamp it, but there's so much tension there. I can see that I might just have to put a real thin wedge in there. Boy, it's coming together here, but it needs a tremendous amount of force. There's a lot of resistance to it coming together. So I think I'm going to add an additional clamping setup here further out for the second joint. And I'm going to make, even though the block I found seemed to work okay, I need another block for the second clamp. I'm going to make some blocks that are a little bit better to clamp against. I also think that because of the tremendous amount of tension in these areas, then I'm going to use epoxy to glue these back together. I don't think regular glue would hold it. I'm just not sure. I can't clean these joints out, perfectly. I'll clean them as much as I can, and I can mix up epoxy this color, and I think it'll work out really well. Now the center section of the table here has cracks in it, but I don't see any movement at all, so I'm just going to try to work around those. So the next step is to tape off the base so that I can strip the top. Just a word about plastic and the use of plastic. I hate using plastic. We're trying to cut down everywhere we can. As you can see, I've already used this plastic for one project. I'm using it for another project here, and I'll keep using it until I absolutely can't use it anymore. And at least for right now, that's a start. So I've got a lacquer thinner here and #1 steel wool, and there's not a lot of finish on here. I don't know what's on here, but I'm going to see if I can just take it off with lacquer thinner as opposed to using stripper. The lacquer thinner is doing a great job of taking the finish right off of here, and so now I'll get some clean lacquer thinner and a clean rag and just do it one more time, and we'll see what happens. Alright, I'm going to sand this now just by hand, and I'm going to sand it with 100. I don't like sanding antique tables with 100, but I'm just going to sand it lightly by hand. I want to cut through just the very topmost surface. I really want the oxalic acid to be able to bite in where these stains are. Always a good sign when the marks actually start to fade somewhat immediately sanding. Now bear in mind, even though I'm sanding with 100, I am not trying to sand out any defects, any unevenness. I want all that stuff to stay. I like the little sawdust I'm getting here. Like I said, I just want to clean off microscopic surface so that the water into which the oxalic acid will be mixed can penetrate. Boiling water, oxalic acid, the measurements don't matter. I'm making a supersaturated solution. Sometimes when you put the oxalic on, you'll see the black marks and watermarks go away instantly, which is always really great. It's not happening here, but I'll let this dry completely and then we'll see what happens. Well, it's been about 2 hours. I can still see some of the darkness through here. It's kind of hard to tell because there's the oxalic is all over it, but I don't think it's dry yet. I may just wait overnight. Okay, this is dried overnight. I'm going to rinse it off. Well, the stains did not go away completely. They're substantially lighter. They're not black anymore. I'm going to let this dry. I may even stick it outside in the sun, let it dry off, and then later I'll sand it again and then decide whether I'll treat it again or not. Alright, well, the tabletop is drying outside. As I've walked by this leaf, I've noticed that the crack has opened up again. I'm glad I used epoxy because at least it's not moving. I've got a piece of maple veneer here. I'm going to even make it a little thinner, wedge shaped, and then insert that into the crack with some hide glue. All right, I've just brought this back in from outside. It's good and dry. It looks fantastic. The stains are really, really light. You know, in fact, it works so well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand this again, try to kick up a little sawdust with the 100. Once again, being sure I don't want to change the character of this. But I feel like I want to sand it one more time and I'll treat it again. And let's just see if we can get it even better. Sometimes if you can just break up these little circles a bit, even if they're not completely gone, if they no longer look like circles, that will be enough. Won't be so distracting. Okay, the spots, lightened up some, as you saw. I'm going to treat it again. I'm going to use the same exolic I used yesterday. It's amazing, you can see how much it's come out of solution. I'll heat it up in the microwave and see if I can get it to redissolve. Okay, the exolic readily redissolved in the microwave, so here we go again. I'll go back and give the worst areas here kind of an extra dose. All right, that's good. These spots when they were wet don't look that much better, but anyway, I'll let this dry and we'll see you tomorrow. Okay, round two. Let's rinse this off and see what it looks like. Well, at first glance, it doesn't look that much different than yesterday, but maybe a little bit. I'll stick it outside. Once again, a lot of bright sunshine today. Let it dry. See what happens. All right, the tabletop has been outside in the sun. It's all dry. It looks great. The marks are very light. However, we know from when it was wet that they're going to show a little bit more. I've talked this over with the owner of this table, and we're not going to go any further with these marks. I'm going to sand this with 150, and I'm going to seal it with a coat of garnet shellac. Okay, I'll sand it up. Now, we need to match the existing leaves. I know it had pretty good color when it was wet. I don't think it's necessary to stain this wood. I don't think it would work very well. Maple doesn't take stain very well. I think what I'm going to do is seal this with garnet shellac, which is a dark shellac. Let's just try a little bit first here. See what it looks like, and yeah, it's definitely a good place to start. It may be it, actually. That's great. Boy, the shellac dries so fast. It looked great when it was wet, but actually, you can see now that the color is really good. I'm going to finish this with the tung oil varnish. I'm anticipating having to tint the varnish a little bit, but the way this looks right now, it looks great. The shellac is really soaking in. The stains are still there. They're not looking too bad. All right, the shellac is dried all night, and it looks really good. The spots are all still there, of course, but greatly lessened in intensity. I'm going to sand this with 320. Okay, all sanded. I'm going to blow it off. I'm going to wipe this off with this product I buy. It's called wax wash remover, and it's kind of like a paint thinner. It'll clean the dust off of here, but also it's designed to remove any contaminants, like silicone contamination that might be on the surface. You'll notice I'm going to just wipe in one direction and turn the rag, so I never wipe over an area. In other words, try not to, if there is contamination, you don't want to spread it around, so do one swipe at a time. Now I'll apply my first coat of tung oil varnish. the color's not bad. Tomorrow we'll decide if I want to add any color to the next coat. Alright, so 24 hours has gone by. Coat went down pretty good. It's still got areas of unevenness. It definitely needs more coats. This is a pretty thin finish. And like I said yesterday, this is definitely oranger than this. You can, it always helps, even though it's obvious it's orange, it always helps to use my little color card laid on there. Really look at what you're dealing with here. It's a little tough, there's so much variation throughout this table, but definitely I got to tone down that orange. I think I'm going to add a little raw umber oil stain to the next coat of finish. I'll experiment a little bit to see. First I'll go over this with just a little 320 again, just lightly. Well, it definitely kills the orange and browns it up. I hope that it's not too much. I'm thinking maybe I should thin it out with a little more finish. Maybe I put a little too much stain in there. I think I will. Although as I pat it off here, I think it looks good. Maybe that's what I should do. Brush it on and pat it off. No, it's not like it's an exact match, but it's just so hard to say. There's so much variation in figure in the leaf, and this is like really different wood, but I like it. At least it's not more orange than that. When you're trying to match colors or make things go together, the most important thing is that this is not redder than that or oranger than that. And I think I kind of like this. Maybe I'll pat it a little bit more. I'll do the other half, and it's got a really nice color to it. I think it'll work well. All right, we'll let this dry and then evaluate, but looking from here to there, I like what I'm seeing. Okay, dried overnight. Now I notice standing from this direction, the center section's a lot better, but it's still a little orangey, maybe a little more yellow. But looking this way, it just looks really good. There's so much variation in this table. I think I'm going to leave it alone, put my final clear coat on. I'm just going to go over this very lightly with some 500 paper. Before I put on what I hope is the final coat on this top, I'm going to finish my touch-up work and clean these and give them a light sanding and give them a final coat at the same time. Not a final coat, the only coat they're going to get. Now I'm going to clean both leaves and sand them lightly with 320. Now I'm going to wipe these off with the wax washer. Alright, I've let these dry overnight. I'm going to see if I can rub them out with some steel wool and wax. The top has, it doesn't feel perfectly smooth, it has little nits in it. So first I'll go over it with a piece of craft paper, just cut from a paper bag. Now I'll go over it with dry steel wool, 4/0 steel wool. So what this dry steel wool is doing, I'm just kind of evening this out. Remember these two leaves, I just put a single coat on. There's a few spots where maybe the finish was a little thin. I'm definitely not going to put another coat on them, but this dry steel wool evens them out. So now I'm going to continue with the 4/0 steel wool, but I'm going to use it with the beeswax orange oil polish. Just an aside here, when you're looking at the underside of a table, you can often get a lot of really good hints, or more than a hint, as to what the original color probably was like. You can see that right here on the underside of this leaf and this board. Well, there we have it, a very nice antique gate leg table. There wasn't a whole lot wrong with it except for the center section here. It was a mess with some really bad black stains. This is a good lesson in, when you have to refinish an antique. I couldn't get rid of those marks. I tried with oxalic acid. They greatly lessened. They did not go away. And I'm glad I didn't do anything else, because ultimately these marks really helped it to look like the rest of the table. And it came in, the color is good. I have about 12 and a half hours in this project, and I think it looks pretty good.